I saw some truly sobering and very saddening statistics. I came across this article that showed about 1,900 Canadians, and we're finding the similar numbers in the US, but there are some different anomalies. Generally speaking, 1,900 Canadians were polled and asked if they can retire soon, by 65, later than 65, and there were some sobering numbers. 22% of respondents said that they plan to work beyond 65. As well, people that plan to retire at 65, they say that about 38% are planning to retire or able to retire by 65, where it was actually 42% back in 2020. And it sounds like clearly there's some sobering numbers that people are losing confidence. The buying power isn't there. People are worried about the financial stress and strain on the homes, big debt. People are stressed out whether they can even afford to survive from one day to the next. The volatility in the very economy that we live in, doesn't matter in the US or Canada, seems to be taking a big toll, and people are not sure, not comfortable with what they have even for savings. When digging deeper into a lot of these surveys, they're saying that almost half, actually more than half of the people responded said they really don't know if they have the proper retirement savings set up. And quite frankly, I think there was about a third of them that said they'd really had no idea what sort of savings and what position they were even in the first place. So clearly we're talking about a conversation of a lot of people that just aren't really engaged in their plans for the future. There's a big percentage of the population of people that just don't really have the confidence. They might have some idea, but they don't have the confidence. And there's a small percentage of the population that are confident that they will be able to actually retire by 65. And that saddens me, because I think back, many years ago, and, I've talked about this briefly, but when my mother first got ill, she dealt with many chronic issues, and I would say this went back to early 60s. And, the first call that I got from her, she was letting me know, kind of how things were going. I didn't even know. She was going to the doctor. She had some tests. She came out, and I got this random phone call during the holiday season. And it was so sad, because she told me what this latest test results, going, like most people go to the doctor semi-frequently or regularly. And so usually, every time you go to the doctor, you see, you go there, they check you over, you do some blood work, and everything's, hunky-dory, other than, some people, you got elevated blood pressure, you've got this or that. But generally, most people just get the news and go on about their business, maybe go get that prescription and go on. But this time was different. And this time, the phone call wasn't so positive. And so my mother got some hard news in her, I believe it was early 60s. And so this whole conversation about people, not necessarily planning for the future, not necessarily saving for the future, not necessarily even spending time doing what they want to do. Because I really believe retirement isn't even about retirement. I don't think retirement in the sense of, I'm retired. Now I'm doing nothing. I've fully retracted from work, and that's all I do. That's not really the intention at all. Conversely, I'm the opposite. Now, granted, I'm kind of forced and thrust into retirement a little sooner than many people. At 53, I was booted out the door. I had a boot up, size 10 across the backside that said, "Look, you're out of here." Now, initial shock, sure, but in a lot of ways it was a big, big blessing. And I honestly, I still to this day, internally I smile and I giggle about it, because it's great. And while I'm getting the news from HR, the managers and the directors, and everybody's sitting around and giving me the news, I'm trying to be a straight face, but internally I'm like, yes, finally. Because realistically, the company's going in these ups and downs, these ebbs and flows, and, you got to catch the wave, right? So essentially, this was my day, and it was my day. So I was about ready. I was kind of ready to go at about 55 anyway. And so the problem is not about the retirement piece so much. It's about having the freedom. And see, that's the problem and the struggles I see, because a lot of people will never, they're not planning for it. And that's what hurts, because it'd be so much nicer if a lot of people that really realistically do have a passion and a zest for life, and they enjoy doing things, and maybe they enjoy the outdoors, and maybe they enjoy spending time with the family, and they're very lively and energetic people, and they just want to enjoy life, but then they're cooped up behind a desk. And so that's really where I'm coming from, in that it's actually quite tragic to hear when people, not sure, not planning, and they don't necessarily put themselves in a position where they're ready to retire. And again, as I say, retire doesn't mean just sitting on a rocking chair, smelling the paint and watching the dust build on the top of the nightstand. The idea here is just having now that freedom, that time to actually enjoy in life and doing some of those things that you wanted to do all along, or having more of that time. Instead of having that 2.5 hours every evening, which is also in some cases preoccupied by hustling kids around, or, doing a little finish up work, maybe paperwork from work, you brought some home, instead of like turning that 2.5 hours into your life, because that's realistically what most people deal with on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Now you can convert that out to, 10, 12 hours of things that you want to do. You can also now, even if there's a mixed, in some cases, it's not always, both spouses retiring at the same time. Sometimes it's a layered or a staggered effect, which is fine. Sometimes that's a great way to blend it out too, whether, the husband retires sooner or whether the wife retires sooner. If there's a plan in place, because that can also create a little bit of animosity and a little stress in the home too, if one feels that they're hauling the weight. The idea is, if there's a plan, there's a long-term plan to build the proverbial nest egg, to put themselves in a position and buys you the leverages, whether it's even carrying on some of the benefits, health benefits that the one spouse maybe has, maybe that'll get you to another point. Take care of some dental work you want to do, and maybe you work another 2 years so you can get all these extra benefits that you wanted to take care of. There's strategies to all of this, and it's not always necessarily about having everybody just retire at once, and it might be and it might not. The idea is just enjoying your time, and realistically, a lot of people just are missing out on that. And as I've said back when I spoke about, the first call that I got from my mom, who unfortunately got some bad news many years ago for the first time, that sort of opened the train of future, really, because every time I would get a call from my mother, it was always great to hear from her, but often you always wondered, is there some other news? Is there some other bad news? And that's always the call you never want to get. You never want to get that phone call and have that conversation, because it's stressful. Now all of a sudden, immediately your whole world is shifted and turned upside down. And so the idea behind retiring early, or at least getting yourself in a position where you can retire before those wee hours, because even though there's so-called experts in the industry that say, and I'll say so-called because to me, I'm just going to say it, in my own opinion, I think a lot of it's propaganda. I think it's all propaganda, just to feed the beast, to keep people moving, keep working, keep feeding into the system, keep putting money in, keep contributing to the pension CPP, keep putting money into the system rather than pulling money out. Now, I understand Social Security, there's a limit. Retirement age in Australia, I believe, is 67. There's a limit. There's limits on a lot of this stuff. Conversely, though, if you go self-employed and you don't draw, and you're not putting into CPP or other benefit packages, you're not putting in. You also may not be putting into the economy as a whole. I mean, you're not spending. And if you're a lower tax bracket, you're providing a lot less in the way of taxation. Oh, look at this. Hey, by the way, look, we got it is Halloween here today after all. Look at that. That is so cool. They're getting ready for it. And so, happy Halloween, everybody. And I thought this would be a good conversation piece on Halloween. So the propagandists, and again, this isn't about Big Brother and all, it really isn't about that, but I do truly believe that there are other motivations for, to keep people working rather than not working. It's production, it's productive, and you want to feel productive. So It works for the system, it works for the government, it works even for you to feel productive. But working at that 9 to 5 corporate grind isn't always what, the begin and end of the definition of production or productivity. There's many ways you can be productive. I have had some of the most productive months in my life in this last 6 months. Managing the estate, managing my transition plan to retirement, ramping up my side hustle. I have been busier than I have ever been, and I truly say that and mean that. And busy, active, but it's been productive. See, that's the win here. It's not just busy, not busy work. I'm very active, I'm hustling, I'm moving, and there's lots to do. So that's the key here. And as long as you're feeling productive, you're feeling that you're able to do something enjoyable with your time, why not? See, because here's the thing. All of a sudden you wait, you're 65, you're 67. And a lot of these people, like I said, are looking at working into their 70s. And so, you go, you work your 9 to 5, you come home, and then what? You're just tired, you're worn out, you don't want to do anything. Weekends come, you're still kind of recuperating because as you get older, it takes longer to get that back and that rejuvenation. We know that. We feel a little, bones ache a little bit as we crawl out of bed, and we just don't feel quite as good. We don't feel as spry. So now your productivity on your own personal life goes down the toilet because the energy that you have is optimized with work. And outside of that, there are a lot of people that, train for marathons and train for Ironman contests and things like that. There are people that go very hard. But for the most part, probably 98% of the population just naturally age gracefully, and you lose that zest, you lose that energy with age. And we also know that I've thrown these statistics out before, but I've seen this, that they say in a lot of countries, sure, if you look at some of the Asian countries like Japan, and there are actually many countries that don't rely as heavily on fast food. And I can't say industrialization because a lot of these are developed or industrialized nations, but a lot of it has to do with the way we eat, the stress levels that are imposed on us. And a lot of these countries, people don't get sick until they're 70, 72. Like a lot of countries in Asia, they average age where people start to get chronically ill to the point where they can't actually enjoy retirement or anything that resembles their own personal time or freedoms. Rather, in the United States and Canada, it's much closer to 66.1 years, the latest statistic I came across. So it's 66 years of age. Then you have to start thinking, okay, I work to 65, I get my act together, I clean up the house, and then wham, doctor appointment, and then, some bad news. I've lived that world. I know what it's about. I've seen it. And then the rest of your life, in many cases, not always, a lot of people live till 85 and they're perfectly fine. And that's wonderful because I do get people and stories that come back like that tell me, yeah, my dad lived to 92, or, my mom lived to 87, and, they have good genes that way. And it's wonderful to hear those kind of stories because the longer the better, right? Especially in good health, because it's not just about life expectancy and the propaganda machine saying that life expectancy is rising. It kind of is because they're drawing people longer. They're holding people longer in chemotherapy. They're holding people longer in you could go on. There's a million conditions. I don't even need to go there. But the thing is, modern medicine does keep people alive longer. But I'll tell you right now, looking from statistics related to cancer and both dementia, their standard of life didn't get any better. It actually went down. And my mother constantly said, if she could do it again, she probably wouldn't. Did it buy her a little extra time? Yes, I think it did initially. Probably the first set, it probably got her a couple more years, a few more years maybe. But who knows, right? If you just don't do anything about it, I don't know. I'm not here to say, treat it, don't treat it. I mean, I do believe modern medicine has a lot of great benefits. And there's a lot of medications that help people with more minor conditions, right? Manage things that aren't so catastrophic. So modern medicine certainly is great, has its places. The big conversation here is, though, it's more about the discussion that us living longer than we ever have, that's not 100% true in my opinion. While the numbers may show it, the median may show that we are living longer. That doesn't change the fact that people aren't getting ill, in my opinion, from what I've seen and heard and seat of the pants measurement stick, is that people are getting sicker sooner now and bigger. Prevalence of cancer is on the rise. We're seeing more of it. That's a given with the bad fast food, obesity, and all those conditions that people are involved with. Okay. Then on top of it, with the additional stresses in these jobs that you see today that you didn't have, it was a different type of stress. As we've talked about, the corporate game, there was more of the blue collar, more of the physical labor type work activities, and the jobs have changed, switched more to, the analyst and the white collar and sitting in front of a desk, being sedentary and just not getting as active, being exposed to much higher levels of stress. And so things have changed. People, sure, they might be living longer because of modern medicine, but what I have seen and what I've lived, they're not living better lives. You talk to any chemo patient who lost their hair and they can't feel their toes, and they're dealing with all the pains and all the changes in the body. They'll all tell you the same thing. Life's not great when they're dealing with that treatment. So the bottom line is, hearing the statistics that more and more people are clearly deciding to retire later is quite disappointing in actuality, because like I said, you will get to a point and there will be no turning back. We can't take that, we can't get that time back. We can make a few extra bucks. You come up a little short somewhere, get a part-time job for 6 months or a year. Maybe you're in construction, you go take a shutdown job. You can get a job, industrial job, go work for a few months, make an extra 20 grand, then go sit around again. Even pace yourself or do, part-time gigs or a side hustle or something. But the idea of grinding it out to 65 just makes no sense to me. None whatsoever. So anyway, please do drop a line, everybody, and hope you all have a great and safe night today. Halloweening, watch out for little ones, and make sure you drive cautiously in the neighborhood. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.